We are in the all-important penultimate round at the London Chess Classic Open 2025. Praggnanandhaa getting scanned by the arbiter there in the background. He comes in, shakes hands with David Gavrilescu. The clock begins. Pragg is playing with the white pieces. He's on 5.5 out of 7. There's a huge sort of group of players who are on the same score. So if Pragg wants to win this tournament, he has to win this game, which would be important from his FIDE circuit standings perspective, also from the qualification to the candidate. So a lot rides on this game. Let's see how Praggnanandhaa approaches it. His opponent is a 25-42 rated player, rated grandmaster from Romania. Promises to be an exciting clash. Every time that Pragg plays a player who is kind of 200 points rated below him, it's interesting to see how his opponents hold up. E4 by Pragg. And David goes for E6, fighting chess, and I think Pragg would welcome that. The French defense. It's something that's become very popular these days. Arjun is playing it a lot with black. We had Ding trying it in the World Championship match against Gukesh. D4. And David here responds back with D5. French defense. And plays knight to c3. Knight comes out to f6. Pragg goes pawn to e5, gaining space. And David brings his knight back to d7. And one of the main moves in this position is to play f4 here, and that's exactly what Pragg does. He pushes his pawn to f4, and this is a very well known position. You will have a lot of games that have gone here, and c5 is the main move, and that's exactly what has been played. c5. And Pragg now plays pawn takes c5. I think inspired by Wei versus Arjun Erigaisi from the World Cup. D takes c5 taken, and knight to c6 played by David. Generally, instead of d takes c5, players go knight to f3. By the way, the arbiter comes in and asks the players to move the table a bit. Takes knight c6. I'm not so sure about why the table was shifted a bit, but okay, the clock is restarted. Pragg now can play his knight out to f3. That looks like the most logical move, but he goes a3. His plan is to play b4 and cement his extra pawn. So maybe for black, bishop takes c5 makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so he takes, knight takes c5 he took. He didn't take it with the bishop. And eyeing the e4 square as well. Maybe bishop d3, maybe knight to f3. He goes knight to f3 here. And David now goes bishop to e7, preparing short castling. I guess one of the nice moves in this position is to go b4. You want to play bishop d3, but you don't want him to take your bishop. So he goes first bishop to e3. And this is all Pragg's preparation. Pawn to a6. to gain space on the queen side with maybe b5 later on. It's a typical idea in such positions. And Praggnanandhaa goes queen to d2, also getting ready for long castle maybe. Interesting to see how David continues here. I think short castle makes a lot of sense, and he does it. Black castles here. And white can now play b4 as one move, bishop e2 as another move. There's long castle in the air. There's h4, there is queen f2. So many options that Praggnanandhaa has in this position, which can be pretty decent. He long castles. He risks it. And he took a good 20 minutes for that move. Now b5, b4 can become dangerous. b5 instantly played by David. What does Pragg have in mind? The opponent is going b4 immediately, I believe, next move. Maybe Pragg has queen f2 on the mind, to attack the c5 bishop. But now b4 is also very interesting. Instead he goes knight d7, also good move. Preparing b4. A lot of pressure here. Maybe knight d4, knight takes, bishop takes. Pragg plays his knight to d4. Knight takes on d4. Bishop takes d4 looks natural here. And now b4 or rook b8. These are the two possible moves, I guess. He plays f6. Breaks on the other side. Also, very logical chess by David, because the rook is on f8, standing opposite the queen. Pragg goes queen to g3, trying to maintain his stronghold in the center. I guess taking on e5 is the correct way. Takes it, fe5, and I think black is pretty happy with the position that he has got here. Fe, and now b4 makes a lot of sense. Just b4, ab, bishop b4, the b file opens up. There's pressure with queen a5, and bishop to c5 played. So the idea of bishop c5 is to get rid of this bishop, also weaken the e5 square a bit. So bishop takes c5. Knight takes on c5. And now b4. Well, that looks very risky. He plays it. Pawn to b4. Praggnanandhaa, very brave here. Very brave. He's playing on tempos now, because if it's not a good position, like for example, let's say if black gets in the move a5, opens up the rook here, this is already very, very dangerous for Pragg. I wonder what's on his mind. He goes bishop d3, eyeing the h7 pawn. Can we go a5? Just putting a lot of pressure. Well, the problem is this queen h3 threatening an attack here and on e6. So first queen e7 played. It's a good move. Defending the e6 pawn. And now knight to e2 to get knight d4 in. I think a5 must. Good or bad, you need to go for it, David. It's a very important moment here in the game. Can he go a5? No, he goes knight b6. Wow, that's just too slow. David, why did you play this? Now Praggnanandhaa jumps in with knight f4. His knight is super strong. It's creating all sorts of threats in the position. with queen h3 and knight looking at the g6 square and whatnot. Let's see if Pragg can find this move knight f4, because it's not so clear, yeah, after knight f4 where the knight is heading. He misses it. He goes rook h f1, which is also a good move, but not the best. The main point is after knight f4, if you go bishop d7, I have like rook f1, knight h5, knight f6, all of these problems. So rook h f1, knight jumps in to c4, or bishop goes to d7. He goes knight c4. He puts his knight here, attacks the a3 pawn, so looks at e3, d2, b2, all these squares. It takes on f8. Queen takes on f8. And knight to d4, attacking the e6 and c6 squares, b5, all of these possibilities. He goes rook a7. And now rook to f1, getting the rook on the open file. He goes rook f7. The main point here is that Praggnanandhaa can take on f7, then take on c4 at the right moment and have a superior knight against a not so good bishop. Queen takes f7. And the queen comes to h4. Look at this pressure here, threatening a check. g6 played here by David. And Pragg now can take on c4. He does it. Bishop takes c4, the right trade. And now the point here is after pawn takes c4, just queen d8. Look at the knight. So good. If queen f8, I can trade and go into this endgame, which is positionally lost. So he goes king g7, keeping the queens on the board. King b2, planning to come up. And bishop b7. Eyeing the g2 pawn. Pawn to g4, gaining space. It's amazing how complete control white has of this position. Black can't do a thing. h4, gaining even further space. And bishop to d5, trying to hold through everything here. And maybe now the queen could enter here, or queen a7. But g5, he pushes on. hg. Pragg takes hg. He's threatening now queen f6 check, perhaps in some positions. King goes to h7. And Pragg does come queen f6. So if you take here, I take e takes f6, and then later on revolve my knight to e5 square somehow. So he avoids the queen trade, goes queen a7. And now Pragg brings his king in. King to c3, defending this. a5 played. Trying to get in here. And Praggnanandhaa takes the pawn. Knight takes b5. Important thing to note is that after check, I have king b2. So he takes AB. Pragg takes with the king. Very decent move. He could have also taken with the pawn. And queen e3 comes in. He's now trying to hunt the king a bit. But look at this. If Pragg manages to trade queens, he's winning. He has a passer. And his g pawn and e pawn clamp the black's pawn. So he goes for a check. King h8. Another check. Queen f8. Closing in on move 40. King h7. Queen f7. Pragg repeats. Gets some time for himself after 30 moves are added. King h8. And now queen to e8 played. King g7. Check. King g8. And Pragg has a very clear plan in mind. He's going like check, check, check. And he's trading off the queens at the end of it. And once the queens are traded, there's nothing much that David can do here. He's just going to be lost. King g7, and now the final check, queen a7. The queens are traded. The a pawn is a complete passer, and David resigns. Praggnanandhaa gets in a very important win, gets the sole lead in the tournament with 6.5 out of 8. In the final round, he drew his game against Ilya Smirin, scoring 7 points, tying with other two players, Velimir Ivic and Amit Ghasi, for 7 out of 9, winning the tournament. And now almost there to the candidates. I think Pragg has 99.9% made it to the candidates. Just needs to see if there's a theoretical possibility. If Nodirbek Abdusattorov wins World Rapid, World Blitz, every tournament that he plays, then does he have a chance. But for now, Pragg, great job.